Welcome to year 2 of A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
Hosted by 4-time Emmy-nominated producer
Frank Pace. And retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guests, Bengals Hall of Fame quarterback and 1981 NFL MVP, Ken Anderson.
Before we start, Billy, I want to tell you our guest today is Ken Anderson, 1981 NFL Most Valuable Player. He's a great friend. He's a terrific ex-quarterback. He holds many football records. I know you probably know more about him than anybody. So Ken Anderson will be our guest today in about 10 minutes or so. My brother, what the hell happened to you?
Hey, Frankie boy, my brother, what can I tell you? Nature. Threw a couple of speed bumps across me. Let me tell you, I tried to get out of here today. I mean, I got the Fiat, right? The old 7-year-old Fiat.
Yeah, and you live a million miles from no place on a hermit hill. Like a fucking hermit.
I'm an hour and a half from L.A. Magellan couldn't find the place that I live in. Forget about it.
I want to tell you this. Magellan didn't find the place you live.
Well, trying to get out of here this morning. I had an inch of snow at 8 o'clock in the morning. An inch. So I could get through this. I got standing, no worries. I got as far as the top of, I'm down in the valley, about 11 miles down in the valley. I got all the way up about 10 miles. And it was hairy. But, I'm a New Yorker. I drive through snow. And then I got to the top, about a mile away from freedom. And the wheels started spinning. And then I was in a jackpot, so I had to. And I'm not, Frank, I'm not mechanically inclined, right? I'm the kind of guy, when they break guys' chops and they say, go get a left-handed monkey wrench. I'm the idiot that goes and looks for the left-handed monkey wrench.
Yeah, well, I would be right behind you.
Yeah, exactly. That's how mechanical I am. But I'm in a jackpot, so I got the emergency brake on, and I'm trying to, I drove out because I didn't touch the brakes, just tried for momentum. Anyway, I'm in this jackpot, and I said, don't do nothing until you think this out. And I know I got chains. I said, let me see if I can figure out how to put the chains on the tires, because that's how bad I am. And all of a sudden, I see this oil truck sideways sliding down the hill heading for me. And I'm like, I'm out of the car. I'm in the woods. I'm like, the hell with the Fiat. It was hairy, man. But then when I finally got the chains on, I tried to go, and as soon as I tried to go forward, it just spun out and pointed in this direction. And I said, all right, that's an omen. I'm going back to where I came from. But I'm glad I did, because it's a disaster out there now. It's white as... And you're probably getting rain. You getting rain down there?
No. Let me ask you a question. Didn't you recently buy a new car?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. I bought the car for my wife.
For free. You bought the car for you. What is that?
This must be the snow. I'm white out. How'd that happen?
I don't know how.
Snowing inside the house. Right?
So you bought the car for your wife.
Exactly.
Why did you take that car?
Because my wife's daughter has to get to work twice a week, and she has a baby. So
what's 2 days?
And my wife's not driving because of the operation, so she hasn't been able to drive.
Okay, so what 2 days does your
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Tuesdays and Thursdays. So again, I don't want to say what day this is, but it's not Tuesday or Thursday. Why didn't you borrow your own car?
I get confused. I didn't know what they was. I used to be an elevator operator, and they fired me because I forgot the route. I mean, that's how confused I am. They told me I couldn't memorize it.
Instead of north-south.
I have moments, Frank.
Instead of north-south, you tried to go east-west, huh?
Exactly. I kept forgetting. I kept looking at the map. 15th floor, first floor. I don't get this. But anyway, brother, so I wish I could be with you. That surprised me. The old Jonathan Winters bit, when he said he was in the army, he says, and then the guy comes in, he's got 4 down and 2 up, stripes. He says, men, I'm glad I got the 50 of us together here. There's 2,000 Japanese on that island. Now, men, there's 50 of us. Now, men, I wish I could be with you. However, I will be observing through heavy lenses. I wish I could be with you, Frank, but I will be observing through heavy lenses. So I'm here, Eddie. I'm on remote.
Okay, so I want to get your impressions of the Sacklers got hit with a $200 billion fine this week for opioids settlement. How can they just happen to have $200 billion hanging around?
It's unbelievable.
To pay out.
It's coffee. It's coffee money for them. It's unbelievable. $200 billion. What the amount of damage they did to this country with the opiates? I mean, those guys are like absolutely criminally insane. They should be tried for. Terrible. And I think Giuliani got him off the hook for the penal problems. Like he uses influence not to prosecute him.
I think the GERD's taking you. Did you eat lunch? You shouldn't have eaten lunch.
I had a piece of your soda bread. I was bringing you guys. And now I'm getting the revenge of the Cork City. I think I'm getting. Montezuma's revenge. I got the revenge of Cork City here. It's coming back and saying, hello there. Did you have something to eat there? Goodbye.
Oh,
anyway.
You're a beauty. So, Sacklers. What was the movie about the Sacklers?
Oh, it's with Michael
Keaton? Yeah.
Yeah, what is it? Dope something?
Dope stick. Dope stick?
Something's dope something about it.
Dope stick, yeah.
The dope came in from the cold.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, I watched like 3/4 of it. But it really bothered me when I heard that Giuliani was the guy who got him off the hook, because I can't believe they don't prosecute these guys. There really is two kinds of laws in America: private law, privilege for the privilege, and for the other people.
Of course there are.
Definitely. I mean, everybody gets treated differently. But these guys, like you said, how many billions they paid out of their pocket? They just happen hanging around?
$200 billion.
$200 billion. Imagine how much they made, Frank.
I mean, they almost $200 billion. You could almost buy Andrew Epstein's island with that.
Yeah. Unbelievable amount of money. It's criminal. I mean, what they've done is criminal. And you know what? I tell you something. This is God's honest truth, because I know. They always talk about the drugs coming across from Mexico. The drugs coming across from Mexico. We got to build a wall. We got to stop these guys from bringing the drugs. The drugs ain't coming from there. They're coming from China and India. They're coming through the U.S. mail.
Yep.
The U.S. mail is the biggest purveyor of drugs in the world. In the world, not just the country. I can get anything I want. I mean, I know because I get Viagra from China, right? I get knockoffs instead of paying what they charge here. I get it for like $1 a piece, right? And I eat those things like M&Ms, So consequently, I sent away to China, but they give you a menu. I mean, you could get everything illegal you could imagine, opiates and everything else, right from China, no problem, right through the U.S. mail.
Well, so we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Ukraine. Ukraine, what's going on over there?
It's just,
and you know what the end result's going to be.
Oh yeah. Well, it's 1.5 million, I think, have crossed the border so far, refugees. And the thing that shocked me is I've been watching the coverage, and I didn't know that they had nukes. And they gave up the nukes under the idea that NATO was going to be their umbrella. And now we're reneging. Like, NATO ain't doing nothing. They're not in NATO, but the idea was they were supposed to have an umbrella by NATO and the U.S. if they gave up their nukes. Well, they gave up their nukes. But we're sending support, but we ain't going to do air. We're not going to do a no-fly zone. Which I'm not saying we should. I mean, I don't want to see it escalate, but I hate to see all these people getting bailed out on too.
Yeah, and all of these people that are supporting Ukraine. I mean, I laud them, but I fear the end result will be known. Is already known.
Yeah. Look, and again, I'm not knocking our country. I think, we have a lot of flaws, but we've done a lot of stupid things over the years. But I think, I like to think that we're not totally driven by money. But when you look at Iraq, I mean, so if Russia were to say, we're searching for weapons of mass destruction, would that be okay? I mean, that's the sales pitch they use here, Well, it's tough. It's tough for us to get on a moral pedestal. Is what I'm saying.
I just think it's a different time. You cannot hide those lies anymore. Those lies are very, very difficult to get across with the.
Well, it's a big. Don't you think it's Derek that it's a lot easier to it's a lot easier to hide a lie and say they got weapons of mass destruction that you civilians aren't privy to than it is to say they're a bunch of Nazis and we're coming in to take the country back. So.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll save that bit
for
our political show.
Yeah, they have a thing called manufactured consent, like when you want to manufacture consent. And like in Iraq, it was always, everything was 9/11, 9/11, Iraq, 9/11, 9/11, Iraq. And like 80% of the country thought that Iraq was responsible for 9/11. It's manufactured consent.
Yeah. Well, talking about consent, we're very fortunate today to have Kenny Anderson joining us on a Mikamuka.
Well, you got some great friends, Frank. I hung around with some great people. I tell you that. This is going to be a real privilege. Kenny Anderson. And real quick, I got to ask him right off the bat: is it Ken or is it Kenny? I always knew him as Kenny Anderson. You called him Kenny Anderson, then you switched to Ken. Obviously, his name is Ken. It's an East Coast thing. I never heard anybody not call him Kenny Anderson. I wonder if he goes by Kenny.
I'm sure he has never gotten that question before. I'm serious. I'm serious. Anyway.
Yeah, but I call you Frankie when I'm kidding around with you on the phone. Nobody calls you Frankie. It's an East Coast thing. I'm Billy. I'm not Bill. There's no Toms in my neighborhood. It's Tommies. There's no Nicks. There's Nickies. Everybody's got a Y at the end of it. I'm curious to see what he calls himself for the hell of it.
Okay. Derek, can you bring on Ken Anderson?
Will do.
Kenny Anderson. Can you hear me?
Hey,
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay.
Good. That's my friend Billy O'Connor. And that's
pleasure to meet you.
And that's
my pleasure to meet you, pal.
That's our third man in the booth. What's your name? Derek?
Hello. Derek Harris here. Coming live from Pasadena. Thanks.
So we got to apologize because Billy lives on a snow-capped mountain, and he got snowed in today. So he's joining us remotely.
An hour and a half from LA, and I'm snowed in, Ken.
I can't believe that shit.
Ken, I want to ask you, how big was your hand size?
I don't know. Big enough, I guess. I don't know. Back in my day, there was no combine. So you didn't do all the measurements, all the testing, all those things. Now scouts came along and they gave you some aptitude tests. And they were timing a 40 to go out and throw with you. I played in an all-star game. At that time, it was down in Miami on New Year's or Christmas Day. It was the North-South Shrine game. I played in that, and they timed all of us. But as far as doing all the other stuff, I never went through that.
Well, can you imagine that poor Ken Pickett in Pittsburgh is now labeled with the smallest hands in the NFL at 8.5 inches?
Well, unfortunately, now they dig into everything. And they go into how many times has he fumbled, which has actually been quite a bit from what I've heard over the last several years. But, you learn how to do it with whatever, tools that you have. So, he's played a lot of football. He'll figure things out.
You know what they say? Women say about big hands, big gloves. If you wear big hands, you got big gloves.
That's exactly right.
I got to ask you, Ken, right off the bat. I've been following you. I always followed your career. I'm a big fan, but it was always Kenny Anderson. It was Kenny Anderson, not Ken Anderson. Kenny Anderson. Do you go by Ken? Do you go by Kenny? Or is that just an East Coast thing?
I go by Ken. I go by Kenny. I go by Hey You. It makes no difference to me.
So you went to Ken Anderson of Little Augustana College. How did the Cincinnati Bengals find you?
Well, you got to get it right. It was tiny Augustana College.
Augustana College.
Right. I think they might have been the first ones to see me play in person. A lot of guys came out, in the spring to Rock Island where Augustana was at and worked me out and visited a little bit. But I remember Pete Brown was at a Notre Dame game one afternoon. And later on that night, I was playing at Valparaiso, Indiana, against Valparaiso. And Pete came over to that game, so he was the first one that saw me. And then Mike Brown actually came to Rock Island and scouted me. And Bill Walsh, in those days, the draft was in January, and our coaches went on the road on Saturday to scout college games. So Bill came up to Waukesha, Wisconsin to watch me play Carroll College on his way to Cleveland for the Bengals game the next day. So the Bengals were pretty aware of me, but, when you come from a school that size, you never know if you're going to get drafted or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious it's a football powerhouse. Has anybody else ever got drafted out of that school? Are you the only one?
No, we had another guy that played in the USFL for a little bit. But, I think my claim to fame is I may be the only NFL player coming from a small school where the team got better when he left.
Really?
Several years after I left, Bob Reed came in as the coach, and they won 4 national titles in a row.
Wow.
So, we didn't even have playoffs when I was in school. That shows how long ago I was playing.
Well, they built off your legacy, Ken. Let's just say that.
Okay.
So you grew up in Batavia?
Yes.
And you shared a backyard with Dan Issel and Craig Sager?
Yeah. Well, Craig lived down the road a little bit. But no, Dan and I did a lot of things together. He was a year older. But, whatever sport was in season, we would play. And, his backyard led into Dick Hallman's backyard, who was a couple years older than us. So that was a great football field as we were growing up. And then, one of the backyards turned into a little wiffle ball field, when it was baseball season. And then, Dan and then the other guy had a double driveway. So that was a great basketball court for us. And it was great because my dad was the custodian at the high school. So if weather got really bad, on the weekends, somehow he might take us down there and have the key, and we got to go in the varsity gym and practice.
That's great. That's great.
We had Dan Issel on the show, and real funny guy. My favorite quote of Dan Issel was he said, I had the worst move in the NBA, and it worked every single time. He said.
Oh, and I told him that for years. He was a good outside shooter. He was a center at 6'9", and then he had a pump fake and drive. Yeah, and I said, you got one move. And he goes, I know. If you ever figure it out, I'm done. It turned out that he's a Hall of Fame basketball player.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think it helped you growing up being a multiple sport athlete?
Oh, no question. And I feel sorry almost for the kids today that, very early on, you got to choose, am I a baseball player? Am I a basketball player? And I'm a football player. And I go back that, all my work on basketball, the defensive drills, we did shuffling your feet, all the footwork type things, that helped me in my drops playing quarterback. I was a shortstop and I was a catcher. I'm playing catcher. You wanted an overhand throw so the ball wouldn't tail off when you're trying to throw out a runner. So that really kind of helped me with my overhand release. And then at shortstop, I learned a lot of different arm angles depending on what the play, dictated. So I think all those other sports helped me. And, plus it kept the boredom out of it. I think if I would have had to play one sport all year, I'd have probably, gone crazy. But now it's, you've got personal trainers and you go to the 7-on-7 camps and then you go to different college camps and, you got a quarterback coach when you're in high school. And, there's just, so much for these kids today. Like I said, I almost feel sorry for them that they couldn't grow up like I did.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't your great rival when you guys were playing was the Pittsburgh Steelers? I would imagine your number one rival, right?
Right.
I mean, with Cincinnati. Right. Did Lynn Swann take ballet or something to help him? Didn't he?
Oh, yeah. He took that even while he was playing, and the guys gave him a lot of grief. But, it kept him flexible. And he said, a lot of those moves that he made jumping up in the air, he could relate to a ballet move.
Yeah.
A little story about the Steelers. I just had back surgery. And I tried to file a lawsuit against the 70s and 80s Steelers, but the lawyer told me the statute of limitations had run out. They were a big cause of the injury.
No kidding. No kidding. Ken, we talk about football in the old days. How many coaches did you have with the 81 Bengals that went to the Super Bowl?
My gosh. Well, we had the head coach. We had Lindy Infante, coached, was the offensive coordinator, coached the quarterbacks. Costin had the tight ends. Jim McNally was the line coach, and George Seifert was our running back coach, and we had a defensive line coach.
And that was it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started with Paul Brown, you only had 6 head coach, and every coach coached a special team. There were no special teams coaches.
Yeah. Now I think the coaching staff is 35 or so.
Well, I know it's well over 20.
Wow, it's incredible.
Let me ask you, Kenny, for coaches, of course, you just told me you played for Paul Brown. What coach influenced you the most in your lifetime? Not just in the pros. I mean, what coach you think really helped mold you to be the quarterback you were?
Well, I mean, I think there's three guys. I had some great coaches. In college, I had, Ralph, Storenko was my head coach, and Ben Newcomb came after my second year. But I had a guy my first 2 years, Charlie Emery, that really kind of got me started in some of the fundamentals of playing quarterback. And then, Bill Walsh, obviously. And he was my first coach for the first 5 years and, built the foundation, of how I played quarterback. I think of how everybody plays quarterback. And I think, you read his books and those fundamentals still apply today. And then I had gone in after he left, gone into a little bit of a slump. And we got a great offensive coordinator with Forrest Gregg, came Lindy Infante. And really, and I've gotten in some bad habits. And, I went and looked back, film from, when I was playing well and saw the habits. So he really worked with me to kind of get those habits back. And he installed a great offense. We were one of the first teams that were doing a lot of option type routes. So we were doing the bootlegs and the nakeds. Our Super Bowl year, I was the second leading rusher on the team. So, we caught a few teams by surprise with that. So I think those are probably the biggest influences.
Yeah, you rushed for over 2,000 yards in your career, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, something like that.
Was it by design, or was it running for your life? I mean, what
a little bit of both. I remember, it was our scrimmage my rookie year, and so I'm on the sideline, and Paul kind of says, "Okay, hey, listen, call the sweep to the left, and you keep it going to the right, but don't tell anybody." And I did it, fooled everybody, and I'm going to make a gain. And we had a linebacker, Al Beauchamp. And I'm like, he looks, we hit quarterbacks in practice in those days. And I said, I better go down because, he went a forearm right over my head. And then in our first preseason game against the Dolphins, he said the same thing. And I was a running quarterback in college, and I ran, and I made about 10 yards, and the safety hit me low, and the corner hit me low, and I go ass over tea kettle. And I came off, and Paul Brown says, "You're supposed to go down." So I learned how to slide.
When you came into the league in 1971, your rookie year, were you nervous? How nervous were you, and how did you combat that nervous? And when did you? Was there a moment that you felt that you belonged? I've always heard there's a moment that every professional athlete feels that they belong.
Well, I don't know when that came, but I was lucky. In those days, the roster was only 40, and you only kept 2 quarterbacks. And so when I went to training camp, basically for the most of training camp, it was just Virgil Carter, the starter, and me. So I got 50% of the snaps in training camp. And our training camp in those days was 9 weeks long, and we played 6 preseason games. And I played half of every preseason game. So, I got a lot of reps, as a rookie. And then when the season started, I remember third game of the year, we went up to Green Bay, and I didn't travel with the team on Saturday because I had an Army Reserve meeting. And so the reserve meeting ended, and I went to the Cincinnati airport, and I flew Cincinnati, Chicago, Milwaukee, Green Bay, and got it.
Now you take a private jet.
Yeah, and the next morning, Bill Walsh calls me aside at pregame meal and says, "Hey, we put a new little play in inside the 5-yard line just in case we need it." I'm not really paying attention. I'm not playing. And, the first quarter, Virgil Carter separates his shoulder. I'm in. And I'd actually played okay. And, I threw a touchdown pass. I think it was to Eric Crabtree. It was my first touchdown pass. And so we're at three down, and we're in a 2-minute drill. And we've got second and goal at the 3-yard line. And we call our last timeout. And we only had seconds to go in the game. And, we're not going to go for the tie. There was no overtime in those days. So we're going to go for the win. And, of course, what play did we call? The play that we put in, I had never practiced before. There's a little rollout, and I roll out. I get outside the tight end, and I see an opening. I put my foot in the ground, and I'm going for the end zone. And not only don't I score, I don't make the first down, and the game is over. We had our pulling guard, who I was supposed to be behind in the corner of the end zone, signaling touchdown. Thought I was behind him, but when he saw that I wasn't, I'm jogging to the sideline. The game was over. He threw his helmet at me. That was not the moment. And then I played. We lost all 4 games that I started, but I played pretty good. And we're I think it was the third game. We're out in Oakland playing, and in the first quarter, Ben Davidson hits me in the hip, and I've never been in so much pain in my life.
Wow.
And I'm laying on the ground, and I said, so we only have 2 quarterbacks, and Virgil's not ready yet. And if I don't get up and play, the punter is now our quarterback. And we had a veteran offensive tackle by the name of Ernie Wright, who picks me up on my belt buckle, picks me up and says, Rookie, get your ass back in the huddle. You're all we got. And I went in and finished the game. And again, we're in a 2-minute drill, right about the 2-minute warning. And I roll to the left and I throw back to the right for a touchdown that gives us a 4-point lead. And I'm laying on the ground. They got to drag me off the field. George Blanda comes in, takes an 80 yards with no timeouts, and we lose that game. Now we go down to Houston, and I can't practice. I can't stand. I can't sit. I can't sleep. My hip is just bad. The doctor said, don't worry, we'll shoot it before the game. So I went out to warm up, and things weren't going well. Just let's go up the locker and take your pants down. And then they started giving me injections, and unfortunately, they didn't work, and I went out, and my longest completion of the day, I think, was 50 yards to Kenny Houston, their safety, who ran it back for a touchdown. And I think we got beat 10-3. And, and I said, all right, I tried. I was hurt. I really tried. And, well, I went up to the locker room after the game, and how the head coach always calls the team together and talks to them. And the first thing Paul Brown said was, well, Anderson, this is the 4th game in a row you've lost for us now. So, luckily, I was glad Virgil Carter came back and played the next week.
And then 2 years later, he was in the World Football League playing for the Chicago Fire.
Right. The next year, Virgil and I were very close. In fact, my rookie year, I would go out, drive to the other side of town and pick him up. Everybody only had one car in those days, so his wife would have the car, take him to practice, and I would take him home at night. And we roomed together on the road. We roomed together in training camp. And then we go on our first road trip, and I was now the starting quarterback, and I got my key and went to the room, and there's another guy in there. And I went to our business manager and said, hey, give me the wrong key. I'm not with Virgil. He goes, he don't want to room with you anymore. Wow. So we weren't quite as close after that. But I started, and I think the only game I didn't start that year, we went up to play the Bears. And at pregame meal, Bill says, Paul's going to start Virgil for the psychological advantage of playing against his old teammates. And I think we won maybe 10-7, something like that. But the worst part of it, my mother really chewed me out after the game. She thought I broke curfew or something and was benched for the game. And I had to explain it. No, that was not the reason.
So, Kenny, let me ask you. You really started to hit your stride in the early 70s. By 1975, you were NFL Man of the Year. What contributed to that shift in your career?
Well, we were about 500, I think, my second year, 72. And then the next year, we won the division. And, unfortunately, my first playoff game, we went down to Miami, and, we lost our running back in the first quarter. Essex Johnson was a dynamic running back.
Yeah.
And we got beat by the Dolphins. I think that was the perfect season. They went on to win a Super Bowl. And then in 75, I think we were 11-3 in the wild card. Pittsburgh won the division at 12-2. We were 11-3, and we went out to Oakland and played a great Oakland team with Kenny Stabler, and we got beat in a close game there, I think 31-28. And then we were pretty good. Bill Walsh left, Paul Brown retired, Bill Johnson got the head coaching job, and we were okay in 76, 77, and kind of going down the wire in playoff years, and then 78, 79, I started having a couple of injuries. We weren't a good football team, and Homer Rice was named the coach midway through the 78 season after I broke my hand, and then they gave him the job in 79, and that was the worst Bengals team I was ever on. But Forrest Gregg came in 1980 and kind of turned things around.
And Forrest Gregg was the coach in 81 also?
Correct.
And that was the year you went to the Super Bowl. Tell us about that entire season.
Well, we finished 6-10 his first year, but I think we had the feeling at the end of the year that we were finally getting Lindy Infante's office. We were going to be a pretty good football team. We had Anthony Munoz, we had Max Montoya, we had a number 1 draft choice player, Bush at center, Dave Lapper was a veteran right guard. We had, Mike Wilson, who came from Georgia out of Canada. And so we had a really good offensive line. Pete Johnson was a good fullback. We had a very solid defense. And then, 81 started off. We're playing Seattle at home, and I was awful. I threw 3 interceptions the first quarter. 2 of them ran back for touchdowns, and I got benched. And our third-string quarterback came in and won the game.
Won the game.
And I kind of talked Forrest into letting me start against New York the next week, and we won 31-30. And from then on, and we kind of got on a roll. And, they say if you're going to go to the playoffs, you got to win in the month of November. And we had 5 games that month, all against playoff contending teams, and that one game was close. And, that's when the orange wigs and the face paint came out at Riverfront Stadium, and, the Who Dey chant started. So that was kind of a special moment in Cincinnati history.
When you were playing, you mentioned before Ben Davidson. I mean, there were so many great defensive players, obviously, just as there was offensive players. Was there any guys that you could think of that they prepared for and said, no matter what, don't let this guy beat us? Like they did, of course, with Nitschke, I would think, and with Lawrence Taylor, of course, they always say that. But can you think of guys that you said, okay, this guy got to double team this guy. We can't let this guy beat us. Did that happen?
Well, no, because most of the time they were on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they had so many of them that you couldn't double everybody. But Joe Green was a guy that always kind of got cocked in the guard center gap and really tried to anticipate the snap count. And so we're playing them in Cincinnati, and early in the game, I said, all right, we're going on 3. I'm going to try to draw Joe offsides on 2. And so I go, hut, hut. And nobody moved except Joe Green, who burst across the line of scrimmage, picked me up in his arms and says, Kenny, don't make me look bad on national television. I went on run the rest of the day. We got beat 27-18 or something like that.
Pretty funny. Pretty funny.
I was thinking before when you said about Ben Davidson hurting your hip, I imagine you could look at the injuries in your body. And when you get older, of course, I have injuries myself, but as a pro football player, you can almost say, okay, that was Ben Davidson, that was this guy, that was this guy. Is that true?
Well, yeah, except when I hurt my knee, it was my left knee, and I played 1 year with a brace the whole time, but it turned out to be my right knee that I need to get replaced. So I've had that done as well.
Well,
I think that was too many drops on AstroTurf back in the day.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you must have been pretty well protected though with Anthony Munoz blocking for you.
He's the best of all time at left tackle, and when you've got that X factor, that Anthony, you take that guy, then you can kind of play some games with the other guys in the offensive line and get double and get help on the guys that you need to.
Tell me about the Ice Bowl, the coldest game ever played.
That's why I live in South Carolina now, Frank. I don't want to be cold again. You can't, when it's 59 below with the wind chill, there's nothing that can prepare you for that. But I think my best moment from the Freezer Bowl was it's early in the first quarter, and they brought in heated benches, and we had never seen them before. And the ones that we had little slots for your feet to go into. Nowadays they've got a pad out front that's heated as well. But so my feet go in the slots. Luckily, I'm sitting on my hands and I have my helmet on, because a minute later there's a big roar, and I stand up to see if there's a turnover. If I'm going back in, my feet don't come out. I go down, and the first thing that hits is my face mask, and I'm seeing stars. And I'm calling for the trainer. I said, I need smelling salts. I can't get knocked out of the game, falling off the bench. In today's world, somebody would have caught that on video. I probably would have had to gone in concussion protocol and may not have finished the game.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. How many passes did you throw that day? Do you recall?
I think low 20s. It wasn't the cold, and Dan Fouts and I have talked about this a lot. It wasn't so much the cold as it was the wind, and we kind of figured out pretty early that we couldn't throw towards the sidelines and be successful. So most of our success was throwing between the hashes, and we threw just enough to be effective. And what did we win? 27-10, 27-7, something like that?
27-7, I believe.
Yeah.
Your running backs must have got a lot of work that day.
Pete Johnson was dynamic. And you talk about running, that I remember that I had 3 big first downs. I mean, just going back, setting, and seeing a hole and running straight up the middle. So, that was pretty big. And, but we had, great guys. Isaac Curtis, Danny Ross was a spectacular catch, and he was a great tight end. Chris Collinsworth. I mean, we were loaded in talent.
Yeah. When a game is like that cold and the frozen turf and everything, there's a lot more turnovers, right? I mean, I expected the ball's got to be like lead, right? So there'd be more turnovers, wouldn't there? Normally.
Well, we only turned the ball over once, and that was late in the game when it was irrelevant. But I think Dan had 2 or 3 interceptions, and I know of 2 fumble recoveries that we had as well. So I think they had about 5 turnovers.
Wow, yeah.
And that was us. 2 weeks later in the Super Bowl. We had 5 turnovers and got beat by San Francisco, and you're never going to play in any game, let alone a championship game, if you turn the ball over 5 times.
Well, did you have 2 weeks leading up to that Super Bowl?
Yeah, we did. We did, and I think that one of the things that hurt us a little bit is that first week we stayed in Cincinnati, and the weather was still just as cold as it was that Sunday for the Freezer Bowl, so we couldn't get much done practice-wise. And then, so now you're trying to get most of your work done, when you get to the Super Bowl site. So it would have been nice if we could have gone somewhere, at least where we could have practiced indoors, to get a little more done for the game plan before we went up there.
Yeah, now it wouldn't matter. You would have probably 2 or 3 indoor facilities right on the site.
Well, they still don't have one in Cincinnati, and they take a lot of heat for that. But there's some extenuating circumstances why. But and I talked with Zach Taylor with it after they won the AFC Championship game, and they had it arranged to go up to the University of Cincinnati, who had a bubble that they could practice in.
Well, can you imagine having to go to the University of Cincinnati when you're a professional franchise? That's probably unheard of these days. So leading up to the Super Bowl, how did you feel in anticipation of playing in that game?
Well, I said before the season that, if I was ever going to go to a Super Bowl, this was the year. Because I wasn't going to get to go to California or Arizona or New Orleans or Miami. I was going to get to go to Pontiac, Michigan. That's where our Super Bowl was. So I was MVP of the league that year, was the comeback player of the league. And so we get up, and Dave Lapham, an offensive lineman, he and I roomed together for about 10 years. And we get in, get the keys, and we go into our room, and we don't see a bed. I'm going, Lap, MVP, we got a suite. And we're trying doors on either side of the room, and they're all locked. And the only bed was the double bed that pulled out of the wall.
Murphy bed.
I said, Lap, I like you a lot, but we got to do something else. We went down, they gave us another room.
The Murphy bed, huh? MVP.
How were your emotions once the game started?
Well, I think everybody's nervous before a game like that. And, I was doing okay. And then until we got to the national anthem, we were standing there, and Diana Ross, who was a big star in those days, sang the national anthem. I said, wow, this must be a pretty big game, because she's never showed up in Cincinnati. And, we kicked off to them. They fumbled. We got the ball in great field position, made a first down, and we had 3rd and goal on the 5-yard line. And if we just get a field goal, the team that scores first has the best chance to win it. And I threw an interception to Dwight Hicks from the 49ers. They went down, and they got the first touchdown of the game.
Yeah, Dwight was our guest several weeks back, and he was a terrific guest, and he was telling about that interception.
Well, I hope he told you what he told me when I met him years later at a golf tournament. He said, I'm surprised you're speaking to me. And I said, oh, yeah, I forgot about that play a long time ago. It's flying through my teeth. And he said, Kenny, I got to tell you, he said, I don't know why. I busted the coverage on that. I shouldn't have been there. So at least I didn't read the coverage wrong.
He said that to us on the podcast. It's exactly what he said. He said it was the only time that he ever abandoned coverage on an instinct.
Yeah. So I feel a little bit better about that now, but it still doesn't take away the sting of losing 26-21.
Yeah, that was a tough game.
So contrast your feelings to that game when you were the quarterback, and the game in the Super Bowl that you won when you were the quarterback coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger.
Well, I remember, up in the press box, you felt pretty good about it. And then all of a sudden, Larry Fitzgerald catches one down the field, goes up the middle and scores. Now we're behind. So now we're in a 2-minute drill, and you feel pretty good. Ben has brought us back, 100 times that year. And the first play he sacks, and now it's 2nd and 20. But of course, he made a great drive for us, and of course the throw that he made in the corner of the end zone, the catch that Santonio Holmes made, to win it. So now I'm scrambling to get down on the field, and my wife and my kids were there, and I'm trying to get them down on the field. I don't have enough passes to do it, and and I saw Don Hasselbeck, great tight end with New England, who was with Reebok Sports, and he gave me enough passes to get everybody down on the sidelines. That was a special moment.
That's great. That's great.
You must have been thrilled this year with the Cincinnati Bengals, with Joe Burrows and the whole team. What they did, they were pretty much overachievers, I guess. But just terrific season for them guys.
Well, no, it was, and I know a lot of people are disappointed. They lose a close game in the Super Bowl, but nobody expected them to get to the Super Bowl, let alone get to the playoffs. And Joe Burrow, he's a tremendous leader. They got some great veteran leadership, Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd, and these guys, and we hate this underdog thing. We think we're a pretty good football team that can play with anybody. And of course, then they win, against Kansas City late in the year. They clinched the division. And, there's Joe Burrow doing his little giddy dance or gritty, whatever they call it, smoking a cigar. But then what I really liked, though, is after the first playoff game, the Bengals hadn't won a playoff game in 31 years, and they beat the Raiders. And so he's doing his post-game interview, and he said, did you have a cigar? And he says, no. I said, I only have cigars when we won something. Back then we won the division, so we still got more games to play. And he was so focused, and and I don't know a lot about football, but I know you can't win it all unless you've got a good quarterback. And the Bengals have a great quarterback, and it's going to be good for a long time.
Yeah, they're going to be back. I'd say they're going to be back, and soon.
Well, the thing is, they've got cap space, and you can't get sacked 71 times and expect to have the success they're having. And not all the sacks are the offensive line's fault. I'm the first one to say that, but I think they're going to try to get some help in the offseason. So I expect them to be better next year than they were this year.
Yeah, I would expect so too. A few things about sacks. You got your share of them. I mean, the first couple of years coming up, you got banged up pretty good.
Yeah, I think when I retired, I was the third most sacked quarterback in NFL history, and I thought I got rid of the ball pretty quick.
Yeah.
So,
and you rushed for 2,000 yards, as we said before, at the same time.
Right. So, I think, as they analyze this season, I think Joe will be the first one to tell you that, some of those sacks were probably on him. He's got to get the ball away. But, the coaches have said, he makes so many plays, escaping, making big plays that it's a fine line when you give up on a play and when you try to extend it. And he'll get those things figured out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I often wonder, and of course it's an unfair comparison. They were the greatest of all time quarterback, and this guy's the greatest. He won more titles, and we have the same argument in basketball. Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, that kind of thing. But I mean, what does constitute the greatest? Is it the amount of titles? Is there any fair way to compare it? I mean, it really isn't there? I mean, I remember going to the Saints, watch the Saints play in the early days, and Archie Manning would be back there. The ball would be snapped, and it was a jailbreak. He'd be running for his life,
Archie was a great quarterback. He and I are still great friends today. He never played on a winning team.
Yeah. He was a great quarterback.
Right. Sometimes you're a product of, where you're drafted or where you end up. And, certainly that was the case, with Archie. But, I mean, I think there are certain guys that kind of transcend that, Tom Brady, all those years in New England. I know Belichick's a great coach, but he probably did more with less than any quarterback that's ever played. He didn't always have the greatest receivers or the greatest fish, and so I was really kind of excited for him that he got to win one in Tampa. Number one, because Bruce Arians is a good friend of mine, and I know a lot of coaches on that staff, but, that he could do it in a different environment. And just to hear what a great leader he was, what a great guy he was down there, and how hard he worked, that made me feel good about him. But, we're old enough that we can talk about, who's the greatest of all time. And people forget about Otto Graham, with the Cleveland Browns, with Paul Brown, that he played 10 years. He got to the last game of the year, the championship game, all 10 and won 7. So that's a pretty good percentage right there. And then he also found time in the offseason to play pro basketball for the Rochester Royals.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
How? Tell me about tell us about your transition from player to coach. What was that like? I know you.
Well, for the first 6 years after I retired, everybody says, "Man, why do you want to go into coaching? That's really stupid. You know how much time it takes, to do that, the sacrifices you got to make." And so I went into broadcasting, and I worked for a local radio and television station in Cincinnati. And then my last year, I really enjoyed, doing the Bengals on radio. I had a sports show. I would do the morning sports for a DJ at a radio station. My first show was at 5:30 in the morning. That would come on kind of every half hour with the highlights. He was the greatest guy, the funniest guy, best job I ever had. And then my last year, the boss asked me to be the sports anchor and to do the 6 and 11 o'clock sports. And that wasn't me. And I didn't enjoy that. And I always wanted to coach. So I was, as I was going around doing the Bengals games, I'm talking to coaches and say, hey, listen, if you hear of anything this offseason, let me know. And after the season, I always did a Monday night show. Around Cincinnati, some of the bars and that. And the last one of the year, the head coach always came on with us. And Dave Schuler came, and we finished and said, are you serious about coaching? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, come on in and interview tomorrow. I'm going to look at the quarterback coach right now. So he hired me. And, like I say, 17 years later, I'm still coaching in the league.
That's incredible. How different was the coaching staff? How difficult was your coaching career from the time you started to the time you ended?
Well, I don't know. I probably the worst thing that happened was the advent of computers. Because when I started, you only had the last 3 games to study of an opponent. That was the film exchange, and it was all 16 millimeter film, and you had it, on 8 tracks that you got to study. And then as I went on, and you had every game that team played, every game in the National Football League on a computer. So now, you kind of do your reports for the last 3 games, but then I'm going, oh, geez, I'm kind of, working on third down. Are there any blitzes that we haven't seen yet that might give us trouble? So you spend more time going back looking at that stuff, and then, well, what about red zones? Anything different we've seen down there? So you spend a lot more time at it that way. And, it's, but it was fun because, especially in Pittsburgh, getting a chance to work with Ben Roethlisberger. And, I take no credit for his success because he was a great player before I got there. But, if he was in his late 20s then, and I always said if I had one person that I could pick to start a franchise with, it would be him. So that was
that's my praise.
That was fun to go there. Pittsburgh was a great football town. I enjoyed my 10 years in Cincinnati, but I was let go, and Lewis came, and every coach has a right to pick his own staff. And I had no problem with that. And, I got hired with Jack Del Rio's first staff down in Jacksonville and loved it down there. And I think he fired 16 16 assistant coaches in his 6 years there, and I made it 4 years. So I felt pretty good about that. And then, had a chance to go work with Mike Tomlin, and I got all the respect in the world for Mike Tomlin and the Rooney family. And that was really a pleasure for my wife and I to go up there for 3 years.
That's awesome.
Well, you mentioned before. I'm sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
It's Derek. I want to jump in right quick about with the coaching, and then Billy, you can jump back. I often wondered about coaching schedules. So you got a weekly schedule, so sort of like a head coaching weekly schedule. How many hours is that? And also, how much of your life is taken up yearly as a head coach?
Well, during the season, I got to the office about 6:30 in the morning. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it was midnight or after when I left.
Wow.
On Thursday, we kind of finished up our duties earlier, after dinner time. But I stayed till about 9:30 because I was working ahead to get ready for, game planning the next opponent. So I'm starting to break things down already. And then Friday was kind of, mid-afternoon. And then if you travel, you're gone all day Saturday and Sunday. And if you're a home game, that was kind of nice because I had a chance to mow the grass Saturday afternoon when I got home from my walk. And, the grass didn't stop growing in Florida. So if we had a home game, it got mowed on Saturday afternoon. And if it was a road game, it got mowed on Friday afternoon when I got home.
To follow up on that question, did your schedule vary from head coach to head coach, or was it just the schedule that you like to keep?
Well, no, I tell you, the best job I ever had was in Pittsburgh because, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I was always home to watch the 11 o'clock news with my wife. So it was always funny because, the last time I saw her was when we went to bed on Sunday night. and then I wouldn't see her again until Thursday night.
Wow.
Because I was gone before she got up. I was always home to have a beer with her and watch the 11 o'clock news in Pittsburgh. And, so it's just, different ways of doing things.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask you before is when you mentioned Otto Graham, it surprised me, but it was nice to hear. When you broke the completion percentage record, you broke Sammy Bowell's record, who I never saw play, but another slinging Sammy Bowell, legendary quarterback. And your record lasted for 27 years. My question is, when you're behind in a game, I mean, obviously you're looking to win the game, and you're going to take chances that you normally wouldn't take to try and thread a needle, right? I mean, that's going to increase your interception percentage.
Right. You have to do that. And it depends on how much you're behind and how many chances that you have to take. And, if you've got enough time, 10 points is not a lot if you've got your timeouts and 8 minutes on the clock. So you're a little bit more careful in those situations. But if you're down, 17 points halfway through the quarter, you've got to take some chances to try to get a quick score.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you're going to try and thread a needle that you normally wouldn't thread, and interceptions.
Correct.
I'm going to take a moment to read your accolades, and I'm going to follow it up with a question. 1981 Most Valuable Player, NFL Offensive Player of the Year, 1981, NFL Comeback Player of the Year, 1981, NFL Man of the Year, 1975, First Team All-Pro, 1981, Second Team All-Pro, 1975, 4-time Pro Bowl, 2-time NFL Passing Leader, 4-time NFL Pass. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Why do you think you're not in the Hall of Fame yet?
I don't know. Maybe some of the voters now for the seniors committee never saw me play. It was so long ago. I think that for whatever reason, the only position that they judge by winning world championships is quarterbacks. They don't take that into account at any other position. So, whether it's fair or not, I don't know. So it's something that I don't spend a lot of time on. And, although the Hall of Fame is a very exclusive club, I think the thing I'm really proud of is that Man of the Year award. They only do one of those a year, and that takes into account what you've done off the field as well as you've done on the field. So that's even a more exclusive club than the Hall of Fame.
Now, that's the Walter Payton Man of the Year now they call it, right? Is that correct?
Correct. It was the Dodge Man of the Year when I won it. It was really nice. I got a Dodge Charger that went along with it. So that was a pretty good deal.
I noticed that picture of your son on the back wall behind you. He's wearing Pony shoes. How long were you with Pony?
Well, when they kind of started out, one of our local reps was in Cincinnati. And
was that Gary Roderick?
No, it was Buck Barney, I believe. Was his name. And
I knew Buck also.
I think the only thing that, I made my kids wear Pony shoes because I got them free. And they go to school and everybody else had Nikes on, and they weren't really happy about it. But if they're free, you're wearing the dang thing.
I'm going to venture a guess here. You think being in the market like Cincinnati, we talked before about not having an indoor facility, that has something to do with you not being in the Hall of Fame. You think? I mean, the smaller market. I mean, if you played New York, you'd be in the Hall of Fame. Let's face it, it'd be over. You'd be in there.
Well, the thing is that unless we played the Jets or the Giants, and the Giants were going to be like every fourth year, you don't go to a big market. The same thing, is going to Washington and with the Redskins, or playing the Cowboys, or playing the Rams. So a lot of the bigger markets were, in the NFC teams. Of course, we had the Jets, but if we didn't get the right schedule, we may not see them for 3 or 4 years. So, I think playing in a smaller market, does hurt you to some extent. But, it was the perfect place for me. When you come from Batavia, Illinois, a town of 10,000, and you go to Augustana College, with the student body of 2,500, going to a city like Cincinnati was very comfortable for me. And certainly going to the structure that we had with Paul Brown and Bill Walsh, just fit me and fit my personality. And so I tell you, I couldn't imagine me playing anywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Brown being the first being the first coach you played for probably had to make a massive difference in your career.
No, it was. When you think about how practices are organized, how the off season is organized, he was the first one to do all of that. And he was the first one to have, coaches work in the off season. I remember when Mr. Barney was interviewing for a job with the Giants, he had to go down to Arkansas because the head coach was on his farm down in Arkansas. in the off season.
Wow.
You know, and he was the first one that came up with playbooks. He was the first one to time players in the 40. He was the first one to give them an aptitude test to judge, you know, not how smart you were, but what's the best way that you learn, so we can tailor that, you know, to you. And he was a great judge of talent. And I really always liked, even after he retired from coaching, and I was still playing, that the first thing that we did in our mini camp was run a 40. And I was, like 4.65, right around there when I came out of college. And even in my last year, the other coaches wouldn't have me at that, but Paul Brown would have me at 4.7. He says, "Kenny, you still got me." That's the time. I don't care what the other coaches say. 4.7, that's the official time.
That's pretty funny. And he also coached Otto Graham, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Wow.
In fact, we had a great celebrity tournament in Dayton, Ohio called the Bogey Busters. And we had, all the big stars of the day, were there. Bob Hope was kind of an unofficial host for it. And, Glenn Campbell and the vice president Ford was there, after he was out of office, and Otto was there. And so I got to know him very well over the years. And he came up to me and he said, "Kenny, we always had a messenger guard system, and so did Otto." And he said, "If you ever, the guard comes in, you just don't like the play, you're going to call one on your own." And I said, "Otto," I'm still a young quarterback. I don't have the nerve to do that. So let me give you one piece of advice. If you ever do, make sure it works.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
All pros wisdom, huh? And you were the first quarterback to run Bill Walsh's West Coast offense. You were the first guy to ever pull it off, right?
It kind of started out of necessity. Virgil Carter was there. He was a short guy, didn't have a tremendously strong arm, so he used a lot of flare control type passes. But, we kind of expanded it when I got there, and it was an offense that really was one of the first times that the quarterback drop was timed up to the depth of the receiver's routes, so that I could anticipate it through it before they break. We had a progression that we went through. And so it was 1, 2, 3, and then I had a flare control to get to. So if I had to throw it for a flare control and we made 3 yards, well, 2nd and 7 is better than 2nd and 10. So we were very disciplined. We, back, when I started, I was throwing, probably, 60% right around in there, and the league average was probably 50%. If you judged it, go back to the statistics in the late 60s, early 70s. If a quarterback, was through, 18 touchdown passes and 18 interceptions, that was a pretty good year. Well, we had a lot fewer interceptions, and like I say, 50% was kind of the magic for completion percentage, and we had, better than that. So it was a unique offense, and like I say, rather than the West Coast offense, it should have been the 8th Street Viaduct and Cincinnati offense.
Tell me again, Kenny, I might have sort of said over fast, and it was just totally new to me. You said the amount of steps you dropped back was coordinated with how deep the receivers would go?
No question. Right.
Wow.
Like a 3-step drop. I had 3 different 3-step drops. I may have a quick 3-step drop if I'm throwing a quick out. I may have a little deeper 3-step drop if I'm throwing another route, and then to be a 3-step and hold if you're waiting for a slant to clear the first underneath defender. So, it wasn't just a 3-step drop. It depended on the route that you had, and then you had a quick 5, a 5 no hitch, a 5 and a hitch, 7-step drop. And then
Mind blown.
But it was funny because as I said, in those days, when I got to Bill Walsh coached the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, and the tight ends. So when we went out to practice, we've got all 3 groups, so we're starting to work on the different receiver stuff. And so when the quarterbacks got to work with him, as practice would end, we would go have lunch, and we'd go back and get dressed again, and we would go out an hour before the afternoon practice, and that's when the quarterbacks worked on our fundamentals.
Wow.
That's mind-blowing to me. Just the nuances that you guys are going through, we have no idea. The layman watching the game has no idea that stuff's going on.
Yeah, when you see a play and you see a guy look at his first choice, look at his second choice, and hit his third choice, that's like a computer mind clicking off all those things, isn't it?
Well, and then when you get good, on your second step, you've already eliminated your number 1 guy. And it's and then by the time you hit your 5th step, you've probably already eliminated your number 2 guy. you can tell what the coverage is doing, who's going to be open. So it gives you a chance to get to a backside in route or out route, something like that. If you can go through your reads in a progression. But I always remember, Steve Young saying that, if you just filmed him from the waist down, he could tell you if he played a good game just by his footwork and the balance he had in playing the quarterback position.
Wow.
That's great.
Wow.
Billy, you know how many times you said wow during this interview?
Yeah, well, I'm blown away, man. What can I tell you? I'm just a mook of a fireman. I'm listening to Kenny Anderson. What can I give you a break here?
All those years you were betting and losing, you didn't have any knowledge at all, did you?
No, I never did. That's why I drive a Fiat. Right? That's exactly why I drive a Fiat. My bookmakers they drive Eldorados. I drive.
Well, I hope you got your snow shovel to shovel your front walker. You got a little snow up there today.
We got more than a little snow there, Kenny me man, Kenny me land. But anyway, man, it's mind-boggling to me that you're not in the Hall of Fame. It's a tragedy, a travesty.
Well, he's going to get there. You're going to get there.
Yeah, you gotta. I just hope gotta happen.
Yeah, I just hope you have a lot of years to enjoy it.
Well, that's I remember I did a podcast with a couple of the senior voters. And when we did the show, they said, stick on for a little while afterwards. I was telling them some more stories. And they said, well, I think you have a good shot to get in at some point in time. And I said, hey, listen, if you're going to do it pretty quick so I can enjoy it. I want to be able to go back, every year to the Hall of Fame game, playing the golf tournament. I want to be able to go out and do some card shows and sign autographs. I want to have fun with it. I don't want my son to have to go up for me.
Yeah.
That's just.
I know my friend Tony Oliva is voted in this year at 83, and he's just having the time of his life. He's just doing all of those things that he's dreamed about doing for. Now he's been retired for 50 years.
Well, and the thing is, there is a backlog of older players for the senior committee, and it's hard to choose. And all these guys are very deserving. So. There's discussions every year. I have no argument with who they put in because they're all so deserving.
Yeah, well, I think that yours is your lack of omission is an obvious faux pas, as is Jim Plunkett's. Jim won 2 Super Bowls, so if you go by Super Bowls, you should be in. But anyway, how long before you get back on the golf course, or are you're not? You're not back.
Well, no, I had surgery. I fused L4 and L5 6 weeks ago, and I sent some X-rays up to the doctor, and we've got a virtual appointment Thursday, and hopefully he'll release me from getting out of this brace I'm wearing all the time, and maybe do a little chipping and putting. But the standard time limit is about 6 months, before you're restriction free, and I can play all the golf that I want. So hopefully a little quicker than that, but I'm looking to the middle of summer.
Great.
Well, I hope you heal fast, brother. Can you tell me if it's still in your mind? The worst hit you ever took by who? Does that stand out? Is there any one hit that stands out over all the years? I'm thinking about Chuck Bednarik and Frank Gifford when he got knocked by Bednarik.
There was one time we're playing in Pittsburgh, and their free safety was a good friend of mine, Mike Wagner. And I missed the safety blitz, and he put his helmet right in the middle of my back. So that may have caused some of these problems.
Wow.
I think it was flagrant. That's one of the reasons I tried to sue their defense. But and then there was the one again. It was against Pittsburgh in '83, where Keith Gary grabbed me by the face mask and pulled me down. And the picture that my son gave me is still on the wall right in front of me. Is the number on the back of my helmet faced the same way as the number on the front of my jersey.
Wow.
And I'm laying there, and I've got no feeling from the neck down. And it was that way for about 10 minutes. And, a little different protocol in those days. Now the board comes up, the helmet stays on, they strap you down. And the first thing our doctors did was take my helmet off. And then, after a few minutes, okay, I feel a little tingling. And he said, can you move your toes? And I remember I didn't want to try. And because I was afraid I couldn't. And then once the feeling got back, they put a neck brace on me. They stood me up, and I walked off the field to go to the ambulance, to go to the hospital to see if I've got a broken neck.
Wow.
I'm in the back of the ambulance, and the ambulance driver couldn't find the hospital. I had to get him off the bed in the back and show him and I'm standing over his shoulder. Off the hill, right to the hospital.
Unbelievable.
The joys of playing pro football in the 80s and the 70s.
That's exactly right.
Hey, Ken, before we go, I want to get your take on the player strike. I know you retired in 87, the year that players walked out. But what do you think of the baseball player strike now?
Well, I think the only ones that aren't taken into consideration maybe are the fans and what we're missing. And I don't necessarily, understand all the issues. I think some of the players, they want to get some of the things that they may have lost in the last couple, if they want to get something like that back. I think it's tough for the owners to give up. But I think, baseball is such a great game that I think if you really want to work out a deal, you can sit there and there's a compromise that can make both sides happy.
Yeah, me too. Derek, you got any final questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Who's the best quarterback right now?
Right now.
Right now. Well, I tell you what, I really like Patrick Mahomes. I really like Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and I think, Joe Burrow is right in that category. So I think that there's so many good young quarterbacks in the league nowadays. I think it's really in good shape.
What makes them so good?
They win, and in different ways, and in different ways. I remember, watching how many times, it's third down and 12, and they're playing man-to-man on Jamar Chase, and, Joe hits him the back shoulder for a first down. Patrick, Mahomes, it's, his scrambling and throwing it sidearm, for a completion. And, Josh Allen, it'd be a big run for him. So, like I said, I just think, all of them have a little bit different style, but they're all great quarterbacks.
They all have that great footwork, too, don't they? That you were talking about before, that footwork.
They all work on it.
And somebody's calling.
Hold on. There we go.
We're good.
There we go.
Okay. And I always wondered this question. Presidents call old presidents or previous presidents for consult. Do any of the young quarterbacks actually reach out to the older quarterbacks for tips? Maybe not just like physical tips, but also mental tips.
Well, not so much now, but when I first retired, I would work for some of the agents and kind of help train some of the quarterbacks. And I did, Terrell Pryor when he came out in the supplemental draft out of Ohio State. The last guy I worked on, I think, was A.J. McCarron when he came out of Alabama, ended up getting drafted by the Bengals. So that was a lot of fun. And, then it's the farther you're out of the game and what they're doing now, it changes a little bit. So, and plus I've got a foundation in Cincinnati where we're trying to make the lives of adults with disabilities better. And that takes up a lot of my time. And I just, didn't have time to be going around the country for weeks at a time and working with guys.
Yeah. Right. And then the other question I had was about running quarterbacks. So there's a theory that people have that the quarterbacks that spend a lot of time running on the field will never have success as a quarterback. But you did some running in your career. What do you think is the right ratio? Is there a particular method that they should be using? How can they find success having both of those weapons, if you will?
Well, I think a lot of it depends, on your offense. The Lamar Jackson runs a different offense, in Baltimore than the Bengals run. They've got the run-pass options that they run nowadays. There's a lot of way to be successful, but you're not going to last as a quarterback unless you're successful throwing the football.
Right.
And I think that's the big thing. And I think that's one of these, Lamar Jackson, he was hurt, this year, but that's where he's made a lot of strides in his ability to throw the football well, and that's why he's a dynamic quarterback.
And then another question I have is, so I often wondered, you played in the NFL for a long time. You're a notable figure. Can you just show up to a game and say, I want to watch the game? Can you just walk up to any game that's going on and they let you in?
No. In fact, if I want to go to the Bengals game, I still call and I buy my tickets. So
wow.
I think if you are a Hall of Famer, you can call any stadium and they'll give you 2 tickets for a game.
Okay.
So, but I got a little ways to go before I get that.
Nice.
Not
Billy,
too much further.
Billy, any final questions, Billy?
Yeah, I just want to thank Kenny for coming, number one, and thanks for many, many years of entertainment, man. You gave me a lot of thrills vicariously watching you play, and I just hope your back gets better soon, pal, really. And the back,
I tell you what, I was lucky. I had a tremendous surgeon, and, I was in a lot of pain, and then as soon as I woke up from the surgery, I had no pain, and I've continued to have no pain. And,
That's great.
the only thing I can do right now for therapy is walk, so we have a new little puppy, so my little Cavapoo Andy, who's 13 pounds, he and I walk a lot together. We're getting very close.
Well, you dished out a lot of pain to your opponents, that's for sure. Thank you so much for being on our podcast, Kenny, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Well, hopefully, Frank, we'll get that Children's Charity Classic in Lexington going again this year, and that was always so much fun. We got a chance to spend a few days together, so let's see if we can't get that back going.
We'll do it for sure. Thank you, my friend.
Okay.
Be well.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hit him straight, pal.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Another good interview.
Remember when we did T. Brown, and he talked about how he, counted the dribbles and count dribbles and for a steal. When he talked about dropping back only 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps, 3 steps with a pause, blew me away.
I know. You kept saying, wow.
Who knew that shit was going on? I didn't know that shit was going on.
You should have when you were bookmaking.
I just want to know.
Bookmakers like printing money, Frank. You're not going to know nothing. Just how much 2 and 2 equals 4. That's all you got to know.
I'm trying to figure out if the word pause is 2 syllables or 1 syllable.
Pause? You got 2 paws like everybody else. You got 2 paws. Dogs got 4 paws. What's that figure out? 4 paws.
Pause.
Frankie said 4 paw before. I thought that was pretty cool. You got a paw in there with a 4 paw.
What? What? What are you talking about?
French for mistake. A 4 paw.
A faux pas.
A 4 paw.
Roger Ver.
Roger Bear. Remember Roger Bear? The guy played for the Rangers. He was an all-star. Roger Bear.
Oh my Lord!
Oh, you guys did it again.
Can we get rid of him?
I'll tell you one more thing I want you to know, Frank, and take this to the grave.
Thanks. Back next week. Thanks, Derek.
Adios.
Next week's guest, longtime LA Times sports columnist, panelist for ESPN Around the Horn, TJ Simers.
We'll see you next week.